Good afternoon, remarkable leaders. Welcome to another Live with Kevin. So happy to be with you today on a sunny Tuesday afternoon in Indianapolis, Indiana, and excited to share with you our guest here in just a couple of minutes. If you're with me here live and it's your first time, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you have been here before, you sort of know the story here. Eventually, this will be an episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. But until then, and starting right now, this is a live stream for you. And so I want you to be a part of this conversation. So to do that, number one, go to whatever social platform you're in, to the comment section and type your name and your location so we know where you are. That would be awesome. And then once you've done that, you'll be ready to share your thoughts, questions, and ideas throughout this conversation, right? Because think about it. If you were sitting around the table with my guest and I, and you had a question, you'd ask it naturally, right? If you had a comment, you would share it. If you had an idea, you would offer it. That's just what happens. Unfortunately, we're not around a table. I'm not even around the same table as my guest. But you can do that virtually by just typing in your questions, comments, and ideas. Hope you'll do that and share them. It'll make a better conversation for us and better podcast eventually as well. So speaking of that podcast thing, we'll do the countdown, Marissa, and we'll start the recording of that starting in 3, 2, 1. Preparation. Boring? Unsexy? Maybe, but it's hard to argue about the importance of preparation. And if we want to be winners and as leaders create winning teams, our guest today believes we must be ready to win, which starts with preparation, being ready with a clear and powerful preparation strategy. That's our conversation today, and I'm so glad you're here to join us for it. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, you can join us live in the future on your favorite social platform. You can find out when those shows are happening and how you can get connected and get other inside information about the show by joining our LinkedIn or Facebook groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn or remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook, and you can get in on all of the future action. Today's episode is brought to you by my latest book, Flexible Leadership: Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. It's time to realize that styles can get in our way and that following our strengths might not always be our best approach. In a world more complex and uncertain than ever, leaders need a new perspective and set of tools to create the great results their organizations and team members want and need. That's where flexible leadership comes in. Learn more and order your copy today at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. And with that, that's my cue to bring in my guest. His name is Coach Matthew Mitchell. He is a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, speaker, 3 times SEC Coach of the Year, and the winningest head coach in the history of the University of Kentucky women's basketball program. The foundation for his team's achievements is the winning tools principles: honesty, hard work, and discipline. Through his focus on the fundamentals, he led the program to new heights, winning seven winning seasons and UK's first SEC championship in 30 years. In his new book, Ready to Win: How Great Leaders Succeed Through Preparation, he shares proven principles from his work so that we can become ready to win. And just off the presses, he's told me he's going back to college basketball and will be coaching the University of Houston Lady Cougars starting this fall. Coach Matthew, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Kevin. It's great to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to our time together.
Well, for all of you, many of you listening don't know this, but I am a huge college basketball fan, and I'm going to do my best to not make this all about me or about college basketball. I'm not going to ask him about flare screens or pick and roll offense, at least not while the camera's rolling. Anyway, so listen, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so excited. I enjoyed reading the book. And as I hinted, preparation, I think, isn't something that we often talk about, and yet it's incredibly important. And so I'm super excited for us to have that conversation. But first, beyond what I just shared in terms of bio, sort of what leads you to coaching college basketball and then writing writing books, like sort of just a little bit more about the journey than I shared in the open.
Sure. I in my early 20s was sort of floundering and was lamenting that fact that I didn't feel like I had any focus to my high school basketball coach. And he said, Matthew, I always thought you'd make a good coach. So why don't you come back this year and help out? So that was 1994. And the first time I stepped on the court at a basketball practice with my mentor and coach Farrell Rigby, I said, this is it. This is where I need to be. So that led me on a journey of just trying very hard to become competent in coaching. So it's very different coaching than it is playing and competing as a player as it is as a coach. And so one of the great pieces of fortune I had and blessings I had was I worked the University of Tennessee women's basketball camp there in the mid-90s. Coach Pat Summitt, the all-time great legend, was on a streak of 3 straight national championships, and just the program was at its absolute zenith. And I was in the middle of all that, working summer camp, never had any clue that my life would change. In the summer of 1999, she hired me as her graduate assistant coach, and it changed everything for me, Kevin. So that led me to successful assistant coaching career, University of Florida for 3 years, University of Kentucky. And then I finally got an opportunity to lead my own program. And that was first at Morehead State, where I developed the winning tools that you mentioned earlier, and then went on to return to Kentucky as the head coach for 13 years. So 15 years as a Division I head coach, and stepped away in 2020 for just some time to contemplate life and see what the next leg was. And so over the last 4 years, have built a business and a consulting firm where we help people with their leadership and their teamwork and their personal growth. And the book part of it came about as I just suggested on getting my thoughts and philosophies on leadership down and available to people. So that's how the books came about, and it's been an incredible journey for the last 30 years, and I'm still learning new stuff all the time and excited about a life right now.
Okay, so now I have to ask, why back to coaching? I mean, you decided to step away. Did you always sort of think you'd go back, or is this just an opportunity that you couldn't pass up? Or I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so it's just such a big part of my life and a big part of my leadership, and learned so much about it. And my family had really encouraged me as I've been on this journey as an entrepreneur and building the consulting firm that's had great success. My wife just always said, I think what you do best is coach college basketball, and I don't want you to forget that. And now I've got a 14-year-old daughter that's loving the game. And so I was coaching her in middle school, Kevin, and she said, Dad,
No.
Yeah, she was the opposite. She was like, "This is amazing. You need to get back to college. You don't need to be coaching middle school. You need to go back and coach college." And so that encouragement had me looking or always open to the opportunity. And the opportunity at Houston was too good to pass up at all. The timing worked out, and so I think it will even enhance my leadership teaching, because we'll be back to solving leadership issues in real time. And so I just think it's all coming together great for my career.
I love that. And, we get books all the time. People pitch us to be on the show, not necessarily you personally, but someone on your in your PR organization or whatever. And I get the book titled Ready to Win. I'm like, okay. And then I read Preparation, and I'm like, okay. Now, every time I get a book, I take a look, certainly. But when I saw Preparation, that really sort of got me more intrigued. And there's more in the book than just preparation, but that's where I want us to focus, because as I said in the open, Matthew, I think that too often we don't think about it enough. We don't spend enough time with it. And as I was reading the book, I think you give us some really good stuff about that. I'm curious, though, from your perspective, both from the coaching world and the business world, sell us on why we need to be more thoughtful about preparation.
Sure. I think what preparation does and what I've found over the years, and file this away under life is not fair. But if I lack preparation, I'm virtually guaranteeing that I'm not going to be in position to succeed. And when I do prepare and I start to do that and find a systematic way to prepare, Kevin, we begin to put ourselves in position to succeed more often. And then even when we prepare and maybe we fall short of the goal, we are informed by, we're open to the lessons that are learned. And so we talk a lot about in the book about getting your mindset around just being a constant preparer. And when you do that, you're going to show up. And whether you meet the goal, reach the goal, or you fall short, you have now gone through a process where you're going to gain valuable information, whether it's a win or some people call it a loss. I've shifted away from losing into just lessons learned. And so that's where I think preparation over time is going to allow you to meet those goals and to achieve the productivity and everything that you're hoping to do. And it is absolutely true in sports. And I've seen that over a 25-year coaching career in athletics, but over the last 4 years in business, it's 100% true as well. And so the building blocks of performance are really rooted in preparation. And we say in the book, preparation will powerfully position you to win. And we believe it's such a key to our success.
So one of the things that I talk about a lot, that in the world of in excuse me, in the sphere of being a leader, there's few things that we can control. I mean, obviously, except ourselves. And so most everything we do as a leader comes from a place of influence. So when I read the line in the book where you're comparing preparation and casinos, I loved it because you said the house always wins. And I want you to connect these ideas together because I think it's so important, because I think it then connects to an even bigger leadership point as well. So when you hook those two things together, what are you saying?
Well, I think if you're in the culture and the zeitgeist, you've heard that term, the house always wins as it goes to casinos. And the point that I'm trying to make is that the casinos are set up they are prepared to be successful, and they have a system and they have a method and they have marketing and they have, the entertainment and all that. But at the end of the day, they are going to win, and they have a method toward that. And so I'm likening that to our process of being preparers, and where we may not always win like the house does, it will get us into a process that sets us up and positions us more powerfully than if we didn't prepare. And so that's the concept that I'm trying to get across to people there, is that we want to increase our chances for meeting the goal or meeting the objective. And when we follow the steps that are in this book, as I have over my career, I've set myself up for consistent and sustained success. It
improves our odds.
Yes.
When we're better prepared, it improves our odds. My dad never used to say the house always wins. He always used to say there's a reason they have to pay for the electricity. The lights are always on. Right. They're he's saying the same thing. And I think that point of what are the things that we can do to improve our odds or our chances of winning? And certainly that could take us back to basketball as well. But as a leader, when we aren't in control, but rather trying to influence, everything we can do to improve our odds, and certainly preparation is one of those things without question. So I think the thing that I will remember the most about the book, at least before we have this full conversation, because that might hook other memories for me with this book. But the thing that I think hooks me the most of this book is the 5 levels of preparation. And I've never heard it quite described in this way. I think it's incredibly useful. So can you walk us through that a little bit? And you've already used the phrase constant preparation, which is one of those levels, and we'll come back to that specifically. But can you sort of lay out the 5 and sort of help us see where we might be stopping.
Yes. So I would say that most people who are interested in our discussion today, or who would be interested in buying a book on preparation, most, I think, probably are not at the first two levels. The first two levels, the first one is casual, which is basically if I have a financial plan, I walk into the convenience store and I see the lottery is worth $42 million. And so, hey, here's, I'll make some money. I'll buy a lottery ticket. Then that's not really a lot of thought and preparation going on. A very casual approach to preparation. Cursory is totally surfaced, just at surface level, just the least amount of effort you could give above being casual and so sort of totally disengaged. I'm just trying to make people, I'm trying to appear as if I am prepared. And I did this a lot in my early career when I tried to rely more on charisma than competency. So those first two levels would be, I would suspect that most people have moved beyond that if they're interested in the book. I think where a lot of us live, and where I'm trying to encourage people to rise above the level 3, that's called a compliant level of preparation. And this is a method of preparation, a level of preparation where I am really checking the box, and people are telling me what I need to do. Hey, this is due on Friday. This is due next Friday. And we just check the box, and we do what the minimum standard is, where we are not in hot water, and we're not going against anything that anyone's saying, but we certainly have not gotten to level 4. So level 4 is where I really want people to aspire to live if they're not there, and that is committed. That is being committed to preparation. And what this level does is I start to think more deeply about the performance I want to have. I start considering all the factors that could possibly affect the outcome. And in my process, I am really, really committed to being fully prepared. And I'm going through the process that we describe in the book. And then the 5th level is where I want us all to aspire to be. So we're trying to live, I say in the book, between level 4 and 5. And if you get to 5, you're really, really cooking with gas, at level 5. And I've encountered some of these people who have been so inspirational to me in life. And that's just a constant level of preparation. And that involves having really solid systems in all of the important areas of your business. And you have thought that through, and you have gone to the level of preparation that says that you have a system really for how you're going to approach being prepared in all these important areas of performance. And so the 5 levels of preparation are just a way to have a leader think about where they're landing, and then giving them a pathway and some methods on how to improve that and get to that highest level of preparation.
Would it be safe to say that the majority of organizations are at level 3?
That's been my experience when I've gone into companies and we're working through whatever challenges they're facing. It is usually the leader, the CEO or the COO or whoever I'm engaged with. They are possibly at a level 4 of commitment or level 5, but the organization is not. And so that's where we try to go in and really help them teach how to do that. Listen, if I ask everybody that's watching us today or listening,
yep,
if they thought it would be a good idea to be honest in business and to work hard in business and to have some discipline around your business, everybody, of high position. Yeah. I think all those things are important. What we do is we teach how to bring those alive in your business and where it connects in a more specific way. And preparation is one of the pillar points of hard work. hard work does not mean I just go sit at my desk for 10 hours. It involves some steps where you can make that effort come alive. And preparation is really the foundation of being a really great producer and a person who gives great effort.
In the book, you have a short interview, ask a couple of questions of Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
And for those of you that might not know, Peyton Manning was one of the best professional quarterbacks in the NFL of all time. He's having tremendous success in business beyond that, and that's interesting as well at the end. But the first thing he says when you asked him about preparation, because if you know anything about Peyton and living in Indianapolis, I know quite a bit about Peyton as an observer for a number of years. He says, I've always been a big believer in work ethic and preparation. So he's hooking those two things together, just like you just said. Here's the thing I found interesting, and let me just read it, and then you can comment. All competitors are looking for an edge, and I thought mine could come through preparation. I knew I wasn't going to be able to outrun defenders, that's for sure, or throw the ball 80 yards down the field, but preparing harder and working harder gave me confidence I could find an advantage. And I think, to me, that's really interesting, because regardless of sort of what else we see we have at our fingertips in our toolkit, you can always make the choice to prepare more effectively. Fair?
Sure. Well, there's two things we're in charge of that I've learned as a coach, and I wish I could be in charge of the players on the team. I wish I could take over this and be in charge of this, but this is where we personally have to show up. Our attitude, I have to control my attitude, because I've told the players, I'll continue to tell them, if it were up to me, everybody'd have a great attitude, but unfortunately it doesn't happen that way. We have to own our attitude, and then we have to own our effort. And those two things, I think Peyton captured just absolutely perfectly, hit the nail on the head. And the concept behind interviewing him, he's a good friend of mine, but he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in game-winning drives in the fourth quarter. And that really speaks to his level of preparation, because when the stakes were the highest and the pressure was the toughest, he was able to make decisions that led his team to more victories than virtually anybody else in the history of the game. And so that fascinated me, and I wanted to dig into that. And I just thought he gave some great insights on preparation. And one of the highlights of the book, and one of the real joys in me writing the book, was having that conversation with Peyton.
So and for those of you listening, if you're not, I hope that the occasional sporting reference is not keeping you from watching or listening if you're not a sports person. And yet I think you have a unique perspective that most of us don't have. And especially if you are a sports fan, there's a couple things I want to ask that maybe will be helpful. I would guess even the casual fan would say that in team sports, we sort of have a pretty high expectation that coaches are going to prepare their teams. There's all sorts of conversation about how busy coaches are. They got all this stuff to do. But one of those things is the large amounts of preparation. What would you tell us with your coaching hat on specifically about what we need to know that you've learned from that specifically that will help the rest of us who aren't going to put a whistle around our neck and coach a team?
Well, what I learned that's very that pertains so well to the business world about preparation and how athletics really can instruct us and inform us is we're competing. We in some shape or form, we're competing to produce and to perform, whether that's in sports or business. What I found was, as a leader, the more time that I would spend on preparation in specific areas of what drove winning. And so the first thing that I think businesses have to do are what's the bread and butter of the business? What has to happen for us to be successful? So for instance, in basketball, for us, one of the key indicators for us to win was the opponent turns the ball over or makes a mistake more than we do. It's called turnover margin. So our turnovers are low, their turnovers are high. And that was a very important part of our business. That didn't mean that it was part of Purdue women's basketball's business or Tennessee's part of the business. But for Kentucky, that was a bread and butter building block of what we had to do. So having identified that, now I must prepare the team in that specific area. And what are all the components that go into that? So I could give you a very long, boring story about all that. But the point is, in your business, what is absolutely necessary, because we can make a lot of things, Kevin, important. We can make a lot of things important, but what is the core and the necessary actions in your business that must happen? And you have to identify those and really dig into those details and then get a plan, and you're prepared, because that's the place where the execution must be at its absolute highest level.
I love that. I really do. I love that. I want to go back to constant preparation, because you have a formula to help us get to that level 5 of constant preparation. Do you want to share a little bit about that for a second?
Well, the constant preparer that I learned from was a great fortune. I met this incredible leader, Tom Nerney, who's become a great friend and mentor, and who has developed a very successful insurance business in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Tom taught me how important a system is for you to be in constant preparation. And so he was like, Matthew, what are the areas for you to be a great recruiter? Identify those, and then start to build a system that's going to ensure that you're ready to complete those tasks with excellence. And that was the big key with Tom was we are going to strive for excellence in these areas. And the more we're prepared, the better, the tighter we get our system, the more dialed in your system is, then that frees you up to be more creative, to be more thoughtful, to discover more, because you're not constantly fooling around with just what is the process. And so systemization is so important for us if we really want to achieve that constant level of preparation. So Tom has a system for how his week's going to unfold, and what percentage is going to be business, and what percentage is going to be sent on him thinking, and what percentage is going to be devoted to his physical health. And so all those things. So that was the big lesson, and the story that I share in the book that I think is interesting about that part of the journey for me. And I'd invite people to really dig into that, because I think it's some very useful information.
I want to ask you one more question that starts with sports but doesn't need to end there, right? So you talk in the book, there's a chapter about strategy, and you talk a little bit about this, and there's a story earlier, and I won't bother people with that story, but there's sort of from a coaching perspective, there's kind of two ways to prepare. Am I preparing based on what I know about my opponent?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I preparing based on our process, mastering what we do, right? And so before you answer, I want to share the story that I heard multiple times. And I believe it was told originally by Bill Walton. He said, the only time I remember Coach Wooden really having us focus on the opponent, and I think it might have been Notre Dame, was the game we lost. Coach Wooden's approach was very much about, we're going to focus on us. And I'm curious, because I think from a strategic perspective outside of basketball, this is a critical question for us to consider. How do you, what's your take about balancing those two? Because you're not ignoring the opponent.
Right. Yep.
Where do you, when you're at your best as a coach, where do you find that balance, and what's your advice for us around that?
So this is a great way to explain it is through sports, but it totally relates to business and to your performance, and no matter what type of industry you're in. But so for the overwhelming majority of our time, we are focused on our process and what we are doing. We don't ignore industry trends. We that's part of our process, is to stay up, stay nimble, stay agile, and so you are absolutely examining the market, and you can see what competitors are doing. But the majority of our time, we are rooted in our process of what makes us successful. So defensively, it's very much like what Bill Walton was describing. We are trying to do what we do really well, and we believe the opponent has to adjust to us because we're so rooted in what we do and what our process is. That's where I think you get so great, because you are rooted in your fundamentals and you're not constantly changing to meet some moment that an opponent poses to you, or the market's posed to you. You have done this over and over and over. Your fundamentals are solid. Your process is solid. So that's the majority of the time. Now, in basketball, where we really start to dig into the opponent is what we call special situations, where whether it be the end of the game, the end of the clock, a time where there's a pause and they're taking the ball out of bounds, that's not in the regular flow of your rhythm, we dig very much into the details there, and we prepare very hard, because at the end of the game, people start to get into some high pressure situations, and if you're not prepared, it's not exactly like the normal flow of the game. So you must be able to identify what is the special situation. Watching the NCAA tournament this last year, end of game, it just showed people who were prepared and who were not. And so you've got to identify that in your business. What are those high stress moments that are a bit unusual? And then you must dig into the details and get your team prepared. And that's how I would describe how we approach that balance of how much time we spend on us and how much time we were responding to the market or to the competition.
I love that. Thank you for diving into that for us. I think it's really, really great advice. Is there anything that you thought I would ask or hoped I would ask that I didn't?
No, I think it's been such a great conversation. I think one thing I would mention that I would encourage people to read the book that has been a powerful event in my leadership, and that I would like to share is what my pursuit of perfection did to my mindset, to my attitude, to my career. I was on a pursuit to be perfect. I was on a pursuit to be the best coach in the world. And that really opened up a lot of negative things for me. It opened up a lot of roadblocks, a lot of obstacles that I would face, because if you're trying to be perfect, you have to get it all perfect. All these things come into play. And so I, a few years back, made a shift from perfection, which in many ways would paralyze my leadership, I shifted to excellence, to pursuing excellence each and every day. And so in excellence, I'm exhilarated. I see all the opportunities. I'm not thinking about all the pitfalls that perfection brings to me. And so excellence is its own reward, is a mindset that I challenge the reader to adopt, so they can really open up the power of preparation.
I love that. And I'm really glad that we had the chance to talk about that. A couple of things before we go. What do you do, Matthew? Coach Matthew, what do you do for fun?
Oh gosh, I have a lot of fun. I love music, and so I sing. I have the Coach Mitchell Band, and we play about 10, 12 times a year. And it's Kevin, it's as much fun as I could ever think about having. And it's like I tell people, they're like, "Aren't you nervous to get up there?" And I said, "Listen, I have more fun than any show that I play. I have more fun than anybody else. So I literally do it for fun, and so that's a lot of fun. And then I love to my wife and I and kids, we love to travel and see new places and experience new things. I was a history teacher when I was a high school teacher and coach, and so I love history and enjoy that. So it is those are some of the things that I do for fun.
I love that. The only thing you knew for sure I would ask you is this: what are you reading these days?
I'm reading a couple of things right now. And so I'm always trying to read something that I can learn from. And then every now and then I try to give myself a chance to read something that's entertaining. So The Last King of America by Andrew Roberts is about King George III. That was that had a fascinating reign as the King of England. And
that's the history teacher in you coming out right there.
Yeah. And so that's a really, it's a huge book. It's taken some time to get through, but it's very, very interesting, and makes me think. So that one is happening. And then a good friend of mine, I'd love to plug her book, is a novel. She's a first-time author. Beth Pride is her name, and she's got a wonderful novel called Back to Blue Holly that is a fiction book, but I'm so proud of her, and it is such an entertaining read. And I am about halfway through that right now, and just I love opening that up every night right before I go to bed, and so I'm having some fun with my reading right now.
Back to Blue Holly and The Last King of America and Ready to Win.
Yes.
The links to all of those will be in the show notes for all of you, for sure. Coach, where can we learn more about your work? Where do you want to point people before we start to close up?
Yeah, I'd love to invite people to listen to my podcast. Comes out every Wednesday. That's real simple. It's called The Coach Matthew Mitchell Show, and we discuss leadership and life and personal growth. And we have some fun guests on there from time to time. So love to invite people to go to that show. CoachMatthewMitchell.com. We have a ton of really accessible free resources for people to improve their leadership, but also some leadership content that can help your team, organization, business move forward. And then I'm on social on all the platforms at Coach Matthew Mitchell. So I'd love for people to check out the winning tools and see what they could do to help them in their life.
All right. Thank you, Coach Mitchell. Before we go, everybody, the question I ask you all every week, and every week means this week too, and it's the most important question I could ask you after you've had the chance to be informed and inspired for 30 plus minutes. And that would be, okay, now what? What action will you take as a result? Because it's fine and dandy, if you will, to learn from this. And maybe you leave with a good story. Maybe you leave with a nice warm feeling, and maybe you even leave with some new conviction. But until you take action, what point will it have been, right? So like maybe it's spending some time thinking about what the bread and butter in your business is. Maybe it's thinking a little bit more about, are we focusing more externally or internally? I don't know what that is for you, but I do know that there were plenty of nuggets here, and the transformation from you from an idea or an inspiration or some education to action will make all the difference. And I hope that you will do exactly that. Our guest has been Coach Matthew Mitchell. Matthew, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Kevin. It was awesome. Hope we could do it again sometime.
I do too. And speaking of again sometime, wherever you watch this or listen to this, make sure you're subscribed, and make sure you're letting people know that they ought to come listen too, because we're here every week. And next week we'll be back with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.